Well, hello and welcome to Overdevest Nurseries on a nice sunny morning in early spring. And here in front of me I wanted to show you this really magnificent variety of Pieris, or Japanese Andromeda as it's sometimes known, and also sometimes known as the lily of the valley shrub. And that's because when you look at the flowers here, you'll see that they're carried with little urn-shaped flowers or bell-shaped flowers that look a bit like lily of the valley. Now that name came from selections that have mostly white flowers on them that resemble the little perennial that we're talking about. But look at the difference with this variety. Really wonderful, deep dark red and very showy, showing up magnificently well above the dark green foliage. Here's a plant that grows to about 5 to 6 foot high by about the same wide. And what makes this plant outstanding is that it's a really good garden performer. Fairly upright habit, nice and bushy, a good strong grower with excellent disease resistance. This is one that we've been growing here on the nursery now for several years, and we're very, very fond of it just because of its good doing ability. Now what's great about Pieris is that they'll grow in a variety of sunlight conditions. Preferably, I think they like to grow in a dapple shade situation. So if you've got somewhere with a little bit of shade, that will be absolutely ideal. But surprisingly also, this is a variety that will do quite well in sunny locations. The one thing I would say about these when you're choosing a spot for it, try to get one that's reasonably sheltered. Because these evergreen leaves are out through the whole of the winter, if you've got a windy, exposed site, guess what? You're probably going to sustain some injury, and they're definitely going to grow better if there's a little bit of protection from that searing, frost-laden wind that we get during the winter time. What's interesting about these is that deer normally leave them alone, and that's one of the major advantages of growing this particular type of Pieris. Deer normally don't bother them, and they're kind of belonging to the family of rhododendrons, azaleas and blueberries, and that kind of gives a clue to the conditions that they grow best in. In other words, soils that are free of lime. Now what's interesting about this one is that we've also found that it's surprisingly tolerant of calcareous soils too. So if you do have a soil that's a little bit on the limey side after you test it, you might find that you really get away quite well with this. What's important in growing Pieris is that you plant them in a free draining soil, and don't put them in like azaleas and rhododendrons. Don't plant them too deep. But also when you plant them, water them well until they get established, and then put down a layer of mulch. They enjoy the cool, moisture retentive soil when you incorporate organic matter like peat and pine bark. And then I would also suggest that when you finish planting is to put down a layer of mulch. You can grow this as a single specimen. It will look absolutely magnificent if you're able to put it in a nice big bowl grouping. It will look really good in a foundation planting, and as I said, kind of like a woodland garden situation, you'll find they'll do very well there too. What's interesting also about them is that the flowers are set towards the latter part of the autumn time. The late summer, early autumn is when it sets its flower buds. The buds then overwinter, and then in springtime they swell out and open up and put on this magnificent show. So that if you have to at any point ever have to prune these, obviously the time to do it is before they start making new flower bud. In fact, when these flowers are turning brown and beginning to go over, that's the time to do pruning. Now I should say that generally they don't need much pruning, and that's one of the advantages of growing this one too. I should also quickly just mention that the flowers are fragrant, so as you see, this really has a lot going for it. Developed in Boskoop in Holland, developed by Margaret Hopp. She made the cross in 1998, selected this seedling the following year in 1989, and then it was tested and trialed at the University of Wageningen for about 15 years before it was put into production. So really good, strong growing, bushy variety with exceptional flowers. You can, I think, look forward to a really good performing shrub. This is Pieris Passion Party.